many friends today. So fun to see you all. Okay, so let's get rolling. I'm Andrea Hill. I'm happy to welcome you to this MJSA webinar on creating strong bonds with customers online. We are 2 years into this MJSA webinar series. We usually offer it every third Thursday, and it's free to MJSA members. But when the coronavirus crisis hit, MJSA opened this up to the entire industry for free, and we decided to do it every week. We are going to continue to do this series every week through June. Then we will go back to we're not going to go to an every third Thursday strategy. We're going to go to an every other Thursday strategy. So we'll still be doing a lot of webinars, but it will only be free to MJSA members. So if you don't have your MJSA membership and you like attending these webinars, you might want to go ahead and sign up. So now I'm going to just make sure that my slides are progressing like they should and you can see them. And we'll get rolling. So a lot of you are asking, how can I maintain? Can you guys see my screen okay? Bonjour, Delphine. I just want to make sure the slides are coming through because it's not showing up on my share screen. Yes, you can see them. Okay, good. So a lot of you are worried, and rightfully so, about a lot of things, because there are a lot of things to worry about right now. But specifically in this case, you're worried about how to make strong connections with your customers if they're not coming into your store or you're not able to see them at trade events. The reality is it's very possible to have strong emotional proximity with customers even at a distance. So that's what we're going to talk about today. The principles of marketing, they don't really change. The tools and the channels do. And our ability to do certain things faster or better or with deeper understanding just continues to improve with the technology. But the principles haven't really changed much at all since I first started practicing marketing in the early 1980s. So today we'll be talking a lot about marketing theory and discipline, which I think everyone needs to know more about, particularly now, because marketing is the one thing that drives all of our business today. And we won't just talk about theory and discipline. We're going to be talking about how to apply these concepts to your business. You don't have to apply all the concepts you're going to learn today. In fact, I'm not even sure that's possible. Rather, your goal should be to have a good broad understanding of these ideas and to develop some specific things that you can try in your own business practice. And over time, as you experiment with these ideas, you'll learn which ones work for you and when and how to apply them, and generally how to be more emotionally proximate with your customers, even though you're not seeing them in person. So those are our goals for today and our agenda. Let's start with your brand, because everything starts with your brand. Your brand is the common thread that has to tie all your marketing channels and campaigns together. No matter where a customer encounters you, whether it's in your store or on your website or through a social media channel or on a Zoom call or a banner ad, your brand has to come shining through. And a brand is more than a logo or a product or a trade name. Those are just simple expressions of a brand. Your brand is the promise of an experience. And in order to figure out what your promise is, you have to provide the answers to these 3 questions. Who are we? What do we do that makes us different? And why do we matter? These are the questions that are at the heart of your strategy. And if you attend webinars with me with any frequency, you know I come back to them again and again. If it gets boring, if it starts feeling second nature to you, then yes, I've won. So I do talk about these 3 questions a lot. Your understanding of your brand should flow from your understanding of your strategy. If you know the answers to these 3 questions, then you have a much better shot at defining a brand that is a promise of an experience. And once you know who you are, then you can make those emotional connections with your customers. You're probably accustomed to thinking about your brand in terms of content. So messages, promises, images, colors, logos, all the elements that we use to express the ideas we want our brand to convey. But what most people forget about when they're thinking about brand is context. My favorite example of what not to do, is a retailer who absolutely demanded that their website feature a virtual tour through their store. So the entire website experience was wrapped around pretending that the visitor was in their physical store. The problem is that the website visitor doesn't get anything out of being virtually in a physical store. It's like going to the dentist for a haircut. So the website visitor expects the web experience to deliver something different from the store, and vice versa. The store should deliver something different than the website. Context in marketing really matters. This is what Marshall McLuhan meant when he said, the medium is the message. So I just want you to think always, when you're thinking about your marketing, think both content and context. Another way to look at this is to think about your brand as if it were a family dinner. You can have a normal weeknight family dinner in the kitchen, at the kitchen table. You can have a family dinner for a holiday gathering that's a little more formal in the dining room. You can have a picnic at the park. You can do pizza movie night in front of the TV with your kids. You're the same family every single time, but the context is different, so the dynamics are different. The context of each of your marketing channels is different. Your store is a marketing channel, or your studio, or wherever you meet with customers, retail shows or trade shows. That's a channel. And because all of your channels are different, some of the dynamics will be different from channel to channel, but you have to be the same family every time, or your customers will not build trust and confidence in you. And if you don't have a clear understanding to the answers, or of the answers to your 3 questions, and therefore the experience that you want your brand to convey and deliver and promise, then you won't be able to do the work of delivering emotional proximity. It's like trying to get involved in a serious relationship, but not knowing yourself yet. If you haven't figured out who you are yet, it makes developing a meaningful relationship really difficult. Emotional connections matter in any business, physical or online. And aligning yourself with your customers' expectations and emotions, mostly with their emotions, increases their satisfaction with the relationship, which keeps them around long enough to become customers and then loyal customers. So we're going to talk about some of the things that strengthen relationships and therefore emotional bonds with customers, and how you can do those things online and make everybody happier. Now, I'll let you in on a little secret. This doesn't just work online. It works in your physical store. It works when you're meeting with people at trade shows. Understanding these concepts, it works in your relationships. So understanding these concepts is a global thing, but we will talk about how to apply them online. Proximity is a very important concept in marketing. It's about what you make the customer think about first, and ideally doing that by tapping into what's most important or relevant to them, or helping something to be more important or relevant to them through the conveying of it. This cannot be done through trickery. It must be authentic. You do play a bit of armchair psychologist with your marketing, and you'll see what I mean as we go through this talk, but it has to be authentic, and it's at its best when you bring thoughtfulness and meaning to the process. So it's armchair psychology, but it must be armchair psychology based on something real, or that superficiality just shines through. It's kind of like a lipstick, I guess. So someone can draw on a new pair of lips with a tube of lipstick, but it's always kind of obvious and bizarre when they do. There's nothing wrong with the lipstick, it's the application. But when lipstick is applied as a way of enhancing one's natural lips, it can be quite appealing. So how you use proximity in marketing and how you lead to stronger bonds with online customers is by enhancing the natural thing. And that means, again, you have to know your answers to your 3 questions and your brand. So no trickery, just authenticity, and then, yes, some armchair psychology. There are 4 types of proximity. We use this concept of proximity in all marketing, by the way. It's not new to the internet. The whole field of graphic design emerged to express ideas to people in an emotional way through print. I often end up cautioning jewelry designers in particular to not treat one design discipline as if it is the same as another discipline. For instance, interior design and jewelry design, they have the same principles. The principles underlying design are all the same, but the conventions are not. So we want to recognize the conventions of expressing proximity through marketing channels for what they are, which tend to be graphic, music, video, fonts, word choice, things like that. So the idea of proximity, something we achieve by reaching for someone's hand or touching their shoulder or brushing a piece of hair off their face or leaning in and laughing together or sitting on the couch with your knees up, just having a long conversation and a glass of wine. The feelings we share through those interactions, media producers have long been keen to figure out how to convey and share through remote means, through their different media. So movie producers do it with music and lighting. Graphic designers do it through very thoughtful integration of fonts and shapes and colors and composition. Orators do it through inflection and pacing. Writers do it through really skillful expression, combining words together. You've certainly read many times where two people say the same thing, but the way the words were assembled for one were just more impactful than how the words were assembled for another. These are all ways of reaching for proximity when we can't reach directly for the person. All masters of media are masters because they have figured out how to reach through that medium and get to the human on the other side of it. So let's talk about some basic concepts. Did I skip a slide? I feel like I skipped a slide. Nope, spatial, emotional, probabilistic, and temporal. I was talking so much, I didn't even realize I was on that slide. Okay, so we're going to talk about these 4 types of proximity. Spatial proximity is the idea that if something is closer to you in physical space, it becomes more important. That's something, like if something's big news in your neighborhood, it's big news to you, but something that's big news in the neighborhood of somebody 4 miles away or 40 miles away is big news to them, but it's not big news to you. So it's really clear to us what it means in terms of spatial importance. The things that are close to us matter the most. Graphic designers do it through composition. Movie producers make the music louder to move the action closer to you, or sometimes they make the music much quieter to make you lean into it and bring yourself closer. Not just the music, even the dialogue, to get you to move closer to it. So they use sound to do that. In this image that we're looking at, the whale feels either more menacing or more exciting, depending on how you feel about whales and diving, but it feels more whatever, not because it's not because of its relationship to the diver, but in the second image, it's closer to you. It's more proximate to you. So that's an example of spatial proximity. Look, I just did it with type. Now, spatial proximity is the most important thing. Oh, look, now I just did it with type again. This time, relevance is the most important thing. So these are examples of spatial proximity. This one, and this one. And type is such a powerful way to express spatial proximity. It's why font selections and combinations and usages are so important. So how do we turn spatial proximity into relevance? Local availability of products is the classic answer. So a retail store has products here. You can go and you can touch the products. Spatial proximity. But we can approximate spatial proximity in graphic design as well. The link on the bottom, the last listing on this slide, is to an article by Visme, which is a tool I strongly recommend for non-graphic designers that are producing graphic design. This is a blog post. The link will take you to a blog post that does a better job of explaining visual hierarchy in graphics than anything else I've ever seen. In graphic design, we talk about visual hierarchies all the time, but this particular article is fabulous for just like making it clear. And some of the images I use in this presentation, you will see are from that article. We can also turn spatial proximity into relevance with video cameras. So if you're on a video call in a group, I've noticed a lot of times this will happen. People jump on a video call, but they won't turn on their camera. I'm sorry. That's a lot like me showing up to the dinner table and doing this and spending my whole dinner with you like this. Camera's on, folks. Just remember to brush your hair or your beard or whatever it is you need to brush and show up ready for the camera. But that's a really important way to connect with people. So cameras on during video calls, off is a serious don't. The wideness or the narrowness of your camera angle is important, or how close you are to the camera. The things behind and around the camera, though I'm kind of stressing over that now because our whole sewing factory is like behind me, but okay. Anyway, you can achieve spatial proximity in a lot of different ways with graphics, with type, with your cameras and your camera angles. So those are just some ideas around how you turn spatial proximity into relevance. Emotional proximity is the idea that anything that generates strong emotions becomes more important to us. If we feel it more, then we figure it must be important. If anyone who's raised children knows that that's not necessarily true, but it feels that way. We like to think that we're rational beings, but the vast majority of decisions are based on emotions rather than logic. Photographs and video are incredible ways to trigger emotions. That's why video works so well. That's why social media and online programmers work so hard to make it possible to easily and regularly share video, because they know that people get more emotionally hooked by video than they do by still photographs. Baby humans and baby animals are often used for emotional proximity because they relax us and they make us feel happy, which then opens you up to the other feelings that might need to come along simply by the letting down of one's emotional guard. On the opposite end of the spectrum, you can trigger an anxiety response simply by showing an image that speaks to the fear centers of the brain. Now, every time I look at this picture, my stomach flips. I never used to be afraid of heights, and then I took a walk very similar to the one we're looking at now on the top of that mountain. I wasn't on that mountain, but I took a similar one. And as I realized where I was and how suspended I was, I became so afraid, like in a rush, that I almost couldn't get myself back down from the mountain. And ever since then, that kind of a picture will just trigger anxiety in me. Once that anxiety is triggered, I stay in that anxious state for quite a few minutes, even though I know I'm not in any danger at all. So how you use images in your social media, on your website, and in everything else you produce has an impact on how people feel. So are you considering whether or not the images you use are contributing to your brand promise? Are they taking away from it? Or are they just sitting around taking up space and doing nothing? So how do we turn emotional proximity into relevance? The best possible way to do this is to make personal connections. And when they're authentic, they last. So this is where social media can be an amazing tool for your business or a complete letdown. If your passion for your customers, your employees, your products, your business, if that shines through, it's infectious. So you can build emotional proximity just by being in conversation with people. And I'll come back to that again and again. As many of you know, I do not believe social media for the jewelry industry is really a selling platform. I know a lot of people talk about how to sell your stuff on Instagram, how to sell your stuff on Facebook, how to get your Shopify store connected to your Instagram account. The vast majority of jewelers do not sell jewelry on social media, but social media is an incredible prospecting device. If the URL didn't work, Laura, I will have somebody check the short link later and make sure that it does work. So we'll fix it. Is anybody else having problems seeing the images I'm sharing? Just want to make sure I'm not prattling on and you're missing something. Can you guys see my slides okay? Images are good. Okay. So I want you to think about social media as the place to build emotional proximity, not as the place to sell. And that is a perfectly valid way to use it. It doesn't have to sell products, close products for you to be meaningful, but you do need to use it in meaningful ways. Beyond the conversations, you can support emotional proximity with imagery and music and graphics. When you have a personal relationship with someone, you experience them in person every day or every few days, and that reinforces this constant emotional connection. When you have an arm's length or an internet length relationship with someone, then you have to use other methods to reinforce that connection. Jewelry designers on this call, you are not your jewelry. And people don't just connect with your product. If your brand is eponymous, then they expect the you behind the business name to connect with them. For my brand, like the use of these red glasses is a way of triggering recognition, and it's consistent. We've also consistently portrayed me in this cartoon form. That's an accessibility. It's a way of making me accessible, and it's also a way of conveying fun that doesn't exist in a headshot, and those are important parts of our brands that we want to make learning and excelling in our business as things that are fun and not burdensome. So use your web chat and your social media icons, use headshots or icons, or cartoon yourself, or use colors and graphics and photos, music, video, testimonials, and social proof. Those are very important ways of turning emotional proximity into relevance for your customers. And see if I can come up with one other example. When I got to Rio Grande back in 1995, Rio advertised a lot, but they only advertised products and categories of products. So they sold a lot of things. So we started advertising to the actual designers who bought from us. And we started showing them at their benches and using our tools, but using their words to convey what Rio meant to them and how Rio supported them. People always liked Rio Grande before that. It had a great reputation as a warm, kind place to do business with, but the human-centric marketing that we created actually created emotional proximity, which led to increased sales and loyalty. So if you have a company without a figurehead, so we've talked about headshots and cartooning and your jewelry, but if you have a company without a figurehead, you can also do this in really powerful ways. You just need to find a way to do it that's consistent with your brand and the answer to your questions. Probabilistic proximity is fun. It's also very hard to scientifically prove, but we have enough anecdotal evidence after literally 40 years of messing around with it that we know it works. So it's the idea that something has a higher probability tends to grab our attention. So things that have a higher probability of happening tend to be much more interesting to us. So if those two dice on the screen were showing a 2 and a 3, they likely wouldn't be as emotionally compelling to you as the 2 dice with the 6s showing, or 2 1s. It's why in tests, people who are offered a 5% chance of winning $2,000. So I can play game A, I have a 5% chance of winning $2,000, or I can play game B, where I have a 60% chance of winning only $500. The vast majority of participants go for the $500 prize because they have a 60% chance of winning it. Political advisors, advertisers use probability on us all the time for fundraising. If they want us to respond to a survey, which invariably is attached to fundraising for our American guests, for the Canadian guests on this call or other countries, you may not be as familiar with this, but in the US, if they want us to respond to a survey, which leads to fundraising, it's more useful for them. They found out they get higher responses if they tell people that they are at 98% of their survey respondent goal, and they just need you because you're part of that final 2%. That is way more effective than telling people that they're at 15% of their fundraising goal. Because people are more likely to feel that their input is going to make a difference if the survey has achieved its perceived critical mass. On the other hand, if you're just going for a straight fundraising goal, no survey in front of it, it's more useful to claim that you are 15% of your goal than 98% of your goal. It's another probability thing. People are likely to feel that even a small contribution matters. So I only have $25 to give, but that's more likely to make a difference because they're so far from their goal. Whereas if they're 98% of goal with the fundraising, who cares about my paltry 25%? So people do this calculation about the probability of mattering. Repeated studies have shown that an item that retails for a price, let's say it's $79, if it's regularly $79 all the time, it's less than half as likely to sell as if you take the same item at the same price with a notification that it's disappearing forever. In the case of the normal price, the customer is just weighing the product against their other needs, and the probability they're playing around with is the idea that they actually need that thing or that the money will be well spent. So they're not as compelled to buy. They don't feel as emotional about it. The when it's gone message, that transforms the probability thought process into what is the probability that I will regret not having purchased this product when it's gone. So that's another way to play it with probability. That's a completely emotional thought process. There's absolutely nothing rational about it, but it demonstrates how important probabilistic proximity, try to say that 5 times fast, is in triggering the emotions that lead to sales. So how you manage your product catalog and the life of your product catalog and sales plays into people's emotional reactions related to scarcity and lack of availability. It's why I always say to luxury brands that you can be on sale. It's not like you can't be on sale, but you can't be on sale all the time, and you can't be on any sort of predictable schedule. There's another thing. I think I talk about it later, but I'll mention it now just in case I forgot to put it in my notes. The other thing is how long your catalog lasts. If all of your products are all available forever, so you just release one collection after another, then there's no compulsion to buy the collection while it's available. So that's another probability proximity element. So how else do we make probabilistic proximity relevant? Well, the rule of 3 is an important one to know here. It works on everything from copy to product presentations. For some reason, the human brain seems to work better in 3s, and nobody really knows why, but it's theorized that it has something to do with balance, but that it might also have something to do with probabilistic proximity. 3 is pervasive in stories and fairy tales and myths like the 3 little pigs, the 3 blind mice, Goldilocks and the 3 bears, the 3 musketeers, the 3-act play, 3 wise men. On the balance side of that argument, good and evil are always less interesting than the gray area in between. But on the probability side, something about 3 makes people more willing to purchase. One item makes it easy to say yes or no. I do or I don't want that. 2 items tends to make it hard for people to choose, but 3 items tends to push the customer toward one of the 3. From a price perspective, if you advertise something from you've got one item for $1,500, you've got another item for $3,000. It's hit or miss whether someone will buy either. But if you add an item for $2,500 right in the middle, that item will sell disproportionately to the other 2. Your overall sales will go up and they will be concentrated on the middle item. Move the goalposts, you move which item sells. Now, if you have a $2,500 item and your $3,000 item and a $5,000 item, the $3,000 item is likely to be the one that sells. There's not enough good science to tell us why this works, but we do have a lot of experience to tell us that it does. Probability sounds like a math game and not very emotional. So I want to come back to why this builds emotional proximity. And it's because when people are dealing with the rule of 3 or with calculating probability in their own buying decisions, they're actually feeling emotional. We remember the things that we felt emotional while doing. Is that good English? So if I feel emotional while I'm in the process of doing something and I feel engaged, not in a bad way, but in a good way, we do remember all the bad feelings too, but with your brand, you want them to have this emotional, engaged, kind of gritty, connected feeling. And using probability in your marketing actually helps them to engage at that level. They feel emotional because they were engaged, and you get stickiness. That's a technical term. Okay, now let's talk about temporal proximity. This is the idea that the closer something is to you in time, the more you pay attention to it. So temporal proximity explains almost all procrastination. It's why I was finishing my slides 20 minutes before this presentation. I was just checking the punctuation. Okay, so let's talk about turning temporal proximity into relevance. Retailers know that temporal proximity works. It's why they advertise even more the closer they get to Valentine's Day or a major gift-giving holiday. And it's why they send out emails and cards prior to birthdays and anniversaries, and they know that the second reminder of the birthday gift usually does better than the first. The closer to the event, the more people are likely to buy. But you can also play into the influence that temporal proximity has on the perception of relevance by using time-gated offers or very short periods of promotion. Instagram and Facebook stories came out because of the success of Snapchat. So Snapchat was this idea that I send out a picture and it evaporates in a few minutes. And that was really exciting to people. They liked it. They didn't just like it because they were sexting each other, whatever. I think that people thought that's all that was about. It was about something much deeper, which is it's like seeing an eagle flying over the road as you're driving by. And two people in the car see it, and the third person in the car is like, I missed it. I did miss an eagle the other day. I still feel this. So it's this idea that something happens and you want to be in the moment and grab it. That is why Snapchat was so exciting to people, whatever they were sending pictures of. So Facebook stories and Instagram stories echo that by saying, here's a story, but it's only available for a few minutes. So when somebody's story goes online and it's somebody you like following, you have a tendency to check it because you know it's going to disappear. If you time gate your offers, this is available, but only until this day, or this is a flash sale, but it's only for 2 hours, or anything that you can do to time gate a promotion, it will get people engaged in that very emotional, oh, I need to react now because it's not going to last forever feeling. And this is, I did put it in my notes, this is the problem with perpetual collections. If they feel like they have forever to buy something, they might just take forever to buy something. So this is how you turn temporal proximity into relevance, and why mixing it in with all your other offers is important. Everything doesn't need to be time gated. It should just be one of the tools in your toolbox. Let's see, I'm just looking to see if, okay, I saw some conversation going there. I didn't know if you guys needed me, and I don't have a helper today. Okay, so why did I just spend all that time talking about proximity? It's because when you're doing digital marketing, you have to find ways to replace the physical proximity to the customer with other forms of proximity. The one thing that face-to-face makes possible, but it's not guaranteed, is having that strong emotional connection. We've been talking about the decline of retail for, God, at least 10 years now, and people keep saying, but you just can't replace the physical experience of being in a store. That's true. You can't. Being in a store is being in a store. That's its context. And the dining room is always the dining room. And even if you eat pizza there, it's not the same as the pizza movie night. But that doesn't mean that the store can't be eliminated. So you can't replace the store with digital because it's different context, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the store is inherently better than the digital experience. Now, I'm not making an argument against retail stores here. I want people to stop being so complacent about the reason people come to retail. If you want people to come to retail, they need the emotional proximity that happens at retail and the experience and the things that you cannot get online. Otherwise, why bother? So that's my point. And you don't need to replace the physical experience of the store. You just need to create, if you want to expand your business, which I want you to do, then it's not that you need to get rid of your store and open your web store. I mean, some people are doing that. Some people are having a web store and finally opening a physical store. It's all good. But if you want to expand your business, then you need to create that entirely different kind of emotional connection in your other channels. So content is important, and so is context, and content plus context gives you really powerful marketing. So now we're going to talk about building those emotional connections and how to do that effectively in remote experiences. All emotional connections start the same way, by listening. Have you ever gone through a period with your significant other? Maybe it was a few weeks or maybe it was a few months, but you were just completely out of sync. You weren't understanding each other. You got on each other's nerves. Nothing earth-shattering had happened, nothing terrible. You were just off. And then one night you're just like, "Ugh, this is silly." And you start talking. And as you listen to each other, all the empathy comes flooding back and you understand and connect with each other again. The problems just seem to evaporate, but all you did was talk. That's the power of listening. Listening lets us understand what's going on with someone else, and that is a gateway to connection. So listening to your customers is one of the most important ways to build emotional connection. And these are the ways that we listen. So we're going to dig into each of these briefly. The first is data. Everybody's talking about data. And if you don't think of yourself as a math wonk, that doesn't mean data is not important to you. You need to monitor your transactional and your behavioral data in every possible way that you can. Use your point of sale system, use your CRM system, use all kinds of online data. There are more online tools than ever for helping you graph and analyze your numbers. In fact, I thought a few times about offering a webinar just on the tools and practices of understanding and using your data. But then I kind of worry it might sound like too dry or geeky to people. But it's a big topic. And there's a lot of information we can share. And it's much more accessible than you might think. So let me know in the comments if that's interesting to you, because that would be fun for me. And I'd like you to know how to use your data, because data tells you a story. And it's an amazing way of listening to your customers. It used to be too expensive for small businesses, but today it's easier than ever and it's incredibly affordable. So you want to pay attention to all your transactional data, like what people did, what did they purchase, what did they return, what did they like. Wish lists are transactional data. Pay attention to your inventory, not just items, but colors, categories, metals. You want to look at your data from a whole bunch of different directions and see if you can find patterns. You want to monitor your brand. You do need to learn how to use your Google Analytics, and it's not as hard as you might think. And then SEO, key phrases and search terms. We don't just listen for what our customers use to find us or our customers. We also listen for what they use to find competitors. So those are all very powerful ways of listening with data. Surveys and polls are also a fantastic way to listen. Rather than sending out a giant survey and just hoping that 4% of the people will respond, ask a little bit all the time. If you're using Shopify, they have built-in survey tools. If you're using WordPress, there are easy survey plugins. Doing surveys is easier than ever. And if you ask them one at a time, or if you do them as a pop-up and then keep collecting that data and build a database out of it, you get a lot of information. 4 of the most important questions you can ask are right here on the screen. How was your overall experience? What was the purpose of your visit? And did you accomplish that purpose? And what was the most positive element of the visit? And if you didn't have a great positive experience, then tell us why. So if you make surveys and polls simple, fast, easy, and fun, then they actually become part of the experience while giving you insight. So they're a powerful way to listen. Focus groups have always been an important part of marketing, and for a very specific reason. Anytime you pull a group of people together with divergent ideas and experiences and opinions, then these valuable insights bubble up from the gaps. So cool things happen when people talk to each other and you are listening. Focus groups are what we call qualitative research, and they used to be very, very expensive to do because you had to hire a focus group company and book a space and get people to travel there and feed them and all that stuff. But they're much easier to do than they ever used to be, because you can actually do them on Zoom calls. You can assemble a focus group. And a really good example of this, Virtual Diamond Boutique, or VDB, they're a jewelry industry marketplace. They have recently done a few absolutely brilliant focus group style webinars called Matchmaker, where they had suppliers and retailers talking to each other. It was just such a fantastic way to listen in and get the perspective of the group. So webinars, you can do a focus group on a webinar now, something I hadn't thought of before. Social media conversations, back to this. If you want to listen, get people talking. So it's called social for a reason. And it's like having a 24/7 focus group at your fingertips. So pose questions, get people talking, and listen to their responses. Listen to them talking to each other. It's one of those areas where it's really okay to just lurk about. Your reviews are a very important part of listening. Google, Yelp, Facebook, your own collection of reviews. But remember, when you're using reviews, it is a many-to-many listening experience. In a few minutes, when we talk about things like transparency and trust, reflect back on the importance of reviews and how you handle them and what people are hearing when you respond to them. Now, I didn't hit on every type of listening here, but I think you hear my message. Use every possible opportunity to listen to your customers because that's the foundation of emotionally rich relationships. Teamwork, being in teamwork with your customers builds emotional connection. My example for this has been really a big learning experience for us the last couple of years. My marketing company used to design websites by collecting a lot of information from the client and looking together at what they liked and what they didn't like. Then we'd go away and build something, and then we'd come back and go, ta-da! And then after that, we get all the feedback and all the work would begin. And I started thinking that doesn't work for anybody. What's in our head for a design for a website isn't necessarily what's in the customer's head. So we have started doing all co-design for our websites. The customer's literally on the screen share with us, doing the website design and watching us move things around and talking about the marketing principles behind the decisions that we make. And the teamwork not only makes a better website, it truly strengthens the relationship. So it's important to involve your customers in your work anytime you can. That's why custom jewelry is so appealing. I know everybody thinks it's just because people want something that nobody else has, but that's only the half of it. The other thing is the more they can collaborate with you in making something, the stronger their bond to you becomes. So collaborate with your customers. Ask their opinions. Polls and surveys are part of this. You can use team-based tools even to just invite them into your ongoing business. So, they can see where their orders are, ask you questions about them, look at where something is in terms of an appraisal or a return. So tools like Trello and Plutio and SweetDash or Slack or Concept Board, those can all be used very creatively and collaboratively with your customers to build that strong sense of teamwork. You can put this really cool tool called UserBack. You can plug it into your website. People can click a button on the website, draw a box around something on the page of your website, and give you some feedback about it, and it comes to you in an email, and then you can respond to them. They can actually give you feedback on your website experience. I love that tool. Basically, the more transparent you can be about your business, the more part of your team your customers feel, and that builds emotional resonance, resilience, proximity. Communication. No matter how much communication you do, it's never enough. Communication always has to be relevant because that's the only way to make it interesting. Many new to online sellers find out they're communicating more with their customers than they ever did in the physical store because many of the ways that the internet works make communication easy. Website chat is essential. I love having always on meeting rooms. You can have a meeting room like a Zoom room, and you can say my office hours are from 2 to 5 every Tuesday and Thursday. Pop on into the digital room if you want to talk to me about something. It's like walking into your store. So they don't have to have a link or an invitation. They can actually just enter the room. That's a little weird at first. You're getting used to the idea that I'm on camera and I'm sitting here working, and all of a sudden you realize, oh, I do this 17 times an hour. But once you get used to that, you also do this 17 times an hour in the store. You're just not so focused on the fact that you're now seeing it on camera. Again, engaging in social media conversations with your customers, not just on your own social media channels. Converse with them in theirs as well. Relationships are a two-way street. Communication needs to be as interested in them as you want them to be in you. And then welcome communication through whatever channels they want to communicate with you on. WhatsApp, SMS, social messaging, email, phone, website, it's all important. And you don't want to have any barriers up to people communicating with you. Okay, now we're going to talk about honesty and transparency, which is a really big part of emotional proximity. Honesty is a given in business relationships. If you want to build relationships that last, that's the only way to do it. And I imagine that everyone right now is thinking, Well, I always tell my customers the truth, and I would never cheat on them. I'm very honest. And I'm sure you are. But there's one aspect of honesty that a lot of companies, particularly in our industry, have a really hard time with, and that is transparency. The more transparent you can be, and if you think about it, again, go back to your significant other relationships, you can be as honest as possible. I mean, like purely honest with someone, but they know when you're holding something back and not saying something. That lack of transparency can cause a fight just as fast as a lie can. So the more transparent you can be about your products, your processes, your supply chains, your practices, then the more likely your customers are to feel close to you. They will forgive imperfection as long as you're transparent about it. So these things on this circle are all the things that it's really helpful to be transparent about if you want to build these emotional connections. Now, you don't need all the customers. You just need the right customers. So you have to know who your customer base is and what matters to them. You also have to know that when you're really transparent about some things, it might turn some customers off. You don't need all the customers. You just need your people. So knowing the answer to those 3 questions helps you gather your people, helps you figure out the things that it's most important to them that you be transparent about. So again, that's that reciprocity in relationship that matters between humans, and it matters in business relationships. The transparency helps people figure out if you are their people. The more transparent you are with your customers, the more likely you are to form strong bonds with them. So if you want to get a little closer, get a little more transparent. Trust comes from all the things we've discussed so far, but there are 2 other big things that help build trust. First, give your customers a sense of comfort and order. This is like children needing structure in order to feel safe. Customers need to know that they're in capable hands. Is your sales process well organized? Is it consistent? Do you need help to help guide the customer through the process and answer their questions? What do they need to have confidence in your process? Even if customers are really well informed about your product and they've done your research, even if they seem ready to have like they already have a strong opinion about what they want to buy and what's the right fit for their needs, they still respect you more if they can see that your sales process is professionally handled at every step. This makes your customers more likely to buy from you again in the future, and it makes them much more likely to refer you to their friends. Also, keep your promises. So part of building a great customer relationship involves establishing trust, and that means keeping your promises. Now, most companies don't mean to break promises. The tendency is to overpromise and underdeliver. So that's the thing you want to work on, is making sure that you're making promises that you can keep, and when you can't, you have to get out there and say, hey, I'm having a problem with honoring this particular promise. That's how we get to trust. Everything we've discussed so far, plus giving them comfort and order and under-promising and over-delivering. And when you've done all those things, don't be afraid to use fun, get personal, use humor. We need to be professional and respectful and use appropriate language and all of those things, but that doesn't mean that you have to totally leave your authentic human self at the door. Don't be afraid to open up with your customers and be a real human with them and talk about music or talk about movies or sports or learn what they like to do in their spare time, or share your business process with them. For people who don't make jewelry, people who do make jewelry are really cool. For people who don't design, having insight into the design process is incredibly fun. So you don't have to have balloons and pizza for something to be fun. Fun is anything that engages us intellectually and emotionally. When you invite people in to your happy place, that's fun. And that builds emotional proximity. And just think about all the ways you can do that on your website, on a Zoom call, on your social media channels, in your communications. Have fun. It's really important. And then understanding. There's something so special about having a restaurant or a bar where you know the proprietor and the service staff, and they know you, and they can anticipate your needs, and they get you. It's like having an extended family. You feel understood. And some people don't even get that at home, which makes the business become then the surrogate family who does understand them. being understood is one of our most compelling human needs. And if you think about all the things we've talked about so far, from listening on, those are all building understanding of the customer, and that's important to them. So then how do we build these emotional connections? Oh, I've talked about all of these except for the last one, respect, but I'm kind of saving that one for last. So we'll get to that in a minute. So these are all the ways that you build the emotional connections with your customers, deploying some of the tactics that I talked about earlier in this session. All of the things we've discussed so far are critical elements of relationship building. If you do just those things, you will be doing so much better than most businesses. But if you want to do even better, way better than most businesses, it's helpful to understand what motivates people. A tremendous amount of study has been done on how to motivate and connect emotionally with customers. But in 2015, it might have been 2016, but I'm pretty sure it was 2015, there was an article called The New Science of Customer Emotions. And it was done by 3 Harvard researchers, Scott Madgens, Alan Zorfus, and Daniel Lehman. And they broke it down, these motivations, in the most succinct, accessible way I had ever seen. I absolutely loved that article. And their research showed them that any company could begin the process of learning about its customers' emotional motivations. And as you gain deeper insight, you can use that information to build stronger bonds with your customers and grow your business with them. It's interesting, this one concept I want to share from this study is the idea that being highly satisfied is not the same as being fully emotionally connected. So a customer can be highly satisfied that the products are good, delivered on time, of the expected quality, and still not be emotionally connected. So when they did this study, they did it on a couple of different retail, they did it across a lot of companies, but this one retail case study within the study was really interesting to me. They studied this business and they found that 22% of its customers were fully emotionally connected. But they accounted for 37% of revenue, and they spent twice as much as the highly satisfied customers. It's just a really interesting thought process. So highly satisfied is not the same as fully emotionally connected, and fully emotionally connected spends twice as much as highly satisfied. So they identified hundreds of emotional motivators that drive consumer behavior. And what I've got on this slide, and don't worry, you're going to get the slides in a follow-up email, and then this replay will be available to you as well. These are the top, or the 10 or 11 of them here, 10. The top 10 emotional motivators that have the most significant impact on customer value. Now, big companies like Apple and BMW and American Express, they use big data to like dig in. If you read the article, you'll see all this crazy wonky stuff they do to figure out the motivations of their customer bases. But they're also serving millions of customers. You can accomplish much of the same thing just through the relationship building strategies we already discussed, and then building your awareness of your customers until you know what their motivators are. And then you can tailor more of your offline and online, of course, or online and offline, I said that backwards, services, products, communications, and experiences, all to satisfy those motivators. So how do you express the motivators? I'll give you here's just kind of a survey of how you do, where you do it, but then I'll give you an example. So every touch point in your experience should somehow respond to the motivations of your customers. So how they browse your website or your mobile app, how they purchase, visits to your social media pages, e-commerce site navigation, how they pick up and deliver products, their social media activity, web chat. Make sure that every touch point in your experience in some way responds to their particular emotional motivations, whatever your customer base is most likely to embrace, because customer bases tend to have some similarities because you have some similarities. You have your 3 questions of who are we, what do we do that make us different, and it attracts a particular crowd. So it's not like you're going to have 1,000 different motivators within your customer base. You're going to find patterns. Your content development and your messaging and your language files. Now, this is something people don't think about much. And I'm going to give you that as the example in the next slide. How you merchandise, your merchandise descriptions, labels, packaging, package stuffers, personalized message pop-ups on the website. These are all places that you should be thinking about how your customers are motivated and how to deliver messages that work for them. So here's your example. The language file in your website is the thing that just has like stock words like your shopping cart is empty or your bag is empty. That's so boring. And it may not speak at all to the motivations of your customer base. So if you wanted a language file for your shopping cart is empty for a I want to stand out from the crowd customer group, then you might say your shopping cart's looking pretty average right now. If your group is motivated by needing confidence in the future, then your shopping bag message, this is really long, but it illustrates the idea. Something wonderful could happen tomorrow. Put something in your shopping bag now to help you celebrate. If your customer base motivation is more related to needing a sense of well-being, then your empty shopping bag message could be, you deserve a treat. Don't let this shopping bag stay empty. Or for your sense of freedom crowd, life is short. Don't let your shopping bag stay empty. So that's 4 different motivations, one message, but how to express it according to 4 different motivations. And when you get closer to what your customers are motivated by, you build a stronger emotional bond with them. Okay, I'm not even going to talk about this limbic model in any detail other than to say that there are lots of emotional models to help you target your customers more effectively. This limbic model was developed by, it's a German research group called Gruppe Niffenberg, and they go really deep into neuroanatomy, neurochemistry, psychology. It's fascinating stuff to study. So part of it is I just wanted you to know this stuff exists. But this map, it's going to come to you in the slides. It stimulates a lot of ideas about content that you can create because it helps you be aware of the dozens of emotional stimulants and motives that you have to work with when creating your content and your context. In our personal interactions even, it's really helpful to remember that the full emotional range is present in any interaction, but we tend to assume that the emotions we're experiencing are the emotions that everyone else has experienced. And we lose sight of the full range, and you need to remember all of it. So that's why it's there. So, of course, all roads come from and return to your brand. And a brand is a promise of an experience and the delivery of that experience. If you start with this tight little package of who you are, what you do that makes you different, and why you matter, and then you expand out to all of these touch points using the emotional relationship building techniques we've talked about today, and all of your relationship skills, and you appeal to the motivation of your customers, who you understand because you've been listening to them, then the ultimate experience that your customers will have of your brand will be one of incredible brand consistency and continuity and care for them. And that leads to the last relationship element, which is respect. Doing this work for your customers demonstrates the utmost respect for their time, for their investment, for their intelligence, and their feelings. And ultimately, respect is more likely to keep a relationship glued together than any other attribute. So by doing the work of building emotional proximity with your customers, you will enjoy stronger relationships than you've ever had before, even if you never manage to meet them in person. So that's what I wanted to tell you about emotional proximity. And now I'm available for questions. So I'm gonna, and I know I ran long, I'm so sorry. It was really hard to fit everything I wanted to tell you in 1 hour. So let me switch over here. And okay, so what was the tool called that I recommended for getting comments? Oh, user back. Okay, thanks, Erica, for answering that. Looking for questions and keep dropping questions in here. Okay, good. I will put together a webinar on data. If only 5 of you show, it will be fine with me. It will be fun to put together. Okay, I don't see any questions up above. How do you manage to stay on brand when posting different types of content pieces on social media? How not to dilute the message? To me, brand is a lot like character. If you really are clear on who you are, you're always on message. If you're not really clear about who you are, like I think about the boneheaded mistakes I've made in my life in relationships, and it was always, because I wasn't really clear on something important about my character. And those are the hard lessons, the really hard lessons. It's true in brand too. So I promise you that if you do the work of really digging in and answering those 3 questions, you won't go off brand and you won't dilute your message, because you'll be communicating regularly, but it'll all be consistent with the character of your brand. You're welcome. If I don't answer something, just tell me, no, that wasn't it. Say it again. How do I communicate social inequity issues without making people feel bad? Jewelry shoppers need to know about mining and environmental impact, but it's not pretty. I think just by being, again, honest and loving, be very loving with the message. We're not trying to, you don't need to convert everybody, you just need to touch their hearts and let them do some processing. This aspect of social inequity, environmental impact, racial inequity, it's very important to me. And in a one-on-one conversation, you can express to someone, well, this is what's important to me. This is something that I think about a lot, and I like to share it. So you're coming from a this is important to me message, not a this should be important to you message. And if somebody says, oh my God, they're using children for that, you can say, yeah, it's still happening in some places, but we don't always know where. So this is why I sell these things, because these are the things I have answers to. These things over here, I bought them 22 years ago in Tucson, and I honestly don't have answers to them. But I did buy them and I did make them into jewelry, and now it's your choice and you have information. So I would say just trying to make the connection with them, being transparent with them, and giving them a chance to process the information. Let's see. Do I have an example of a website that I feel really represents the brand? I'm sure I do, but I'm going to have to make a note of it because I'm not thinking on my toes fast enough to give you a great one right now. But unfortunately, there aren't that many of them. But I am making a note, Suzanne. How can you ask people to spend a lot of money when things are so hard right now? Well, this is why people have choice. And I think that you have to, again, it comes back to respect. Respect that people know what they want to do with their money. So just put it out there. And the people who have money to spend, and people are buying jewelry right now. There's a lot of jewelry being sold. So the people who have the money to spend or have decided to prioritize jewelry for some reason, they feel good about that. And you should feel good about that too. Be thoughtful with your messaging. Hard selling is probably not the best thing right now. There's a lot of stuff you can do to communicate with your customers without saying, buy me, buy me, buy me. You can share things that are going on. You're just trying to stay top of mind. People buy when they're ready to buy, and if you're top of mind, then they come to you. So don't worry so much about selling, worry more about communicating. And also, you do need to know your customers. Some of you have customer groups that are hurting more than others. So the answer could be different from group to group as well. I realize that's a fairly broad answer, Hannah. I agree, Megan. People do want to do good. I think that's important, that we give them the information so that they can make those choices. And then they feel virtuous, and that's an emotional connection too. Regarding the rule of threes and pricing, my primary items are either made in sterling or 14, since they're 90% purchases to give to others. These days, would the items in a lower price metal than sterling silver be a good strategy to stimulate sales? It could. So it's partly about rule of three, and it's partly about making options available to people. I had a conversation with a client yesterday, and they were saying, well, we need to be prepared for people to negotiate on price. And my answer was, no, you don't. You just need to know what they're prepared to spend. Just because, so somebody wants this thing, okay? It's $100. It's a cool little isometric thing, by the way, for people who never get up from their desk. Okay, so somebody wants this, and it's $105. And they say, well, I want that, but I want it for $90. Okay, you can want things, that's fine. But you're not going to get this for $90. You're going to get this version, which is $70. So your answer is, I'm going to give you something that fits your budget. people do need options, but they don't have to be the exact options that they're asking for. So remember, when it comes to negotiating, people are always asking. Sometimes it's a budget problem. Sometimes it's just because they like to negotiate. But having that broad price range available to you so you can move people to things that fit their budget, that is important. And that might mean going to a different meadow. Just looking for other questions here. Well, it looks like things are getting quiet. I know I ran long. I just wanted to stick around long enough to make sure I got all the questions. If you had more to ask, I still see some typing. You're welcome, Melissa. Just hanging in to see if anything else pops through. Okay. I'll do the data one. We'll get it in the schedule. We have a couple of fun ones we've thought of during the last few webinars, so we'll put them together. Okay, well, I guess that is it for today then. So thank you for your time and for running over with me. And I really appreciate you guys attending these webinars. They're very fun to do for you. Next week, we are going to be doing a webinar about prospecting. So if people aren't just wandering in your store, if you're a retailer, or if you're not out at trade events or retail trade events meeting people, how do you find customers? So next week it's going to be sort of another, like, dig in and do some meaty marketing presentation. And we're going to talk about how to do that online prospecting. We are going to continue the weekly webinars for free to the entire industry through June. And then we'll go to our every other week schedule starting in July. And for that, I would like to very, very much thank MJSA for putting this series out here for the industry and making it possible to do this. I think it's a tremendous service to the industry. And like I said, if you like this series, you're going to want your MJSA membership by July, because they will go back to being free for members and paid for everybody else at that point. And with that, I'm just kind of peeking over. Yes, you'll get an email to sign up for that one. Or Katie, you can go right to the mjsa.org website and you can sign up for it there as well. So thanks all of you. It was so great to share this information with you, and I will look forward to seeing you next week. Take care, be careful, be healthy. Bye.